It's time, I think, to ask a grave and worrying question, and that is whether or not our judicial system is fit for purpose. And the tragic case of Sarah Sharif suggests otherwise, doesn't it? This isn't an isolated failure, but an indictment of a system that is arrogant, inaccessible, and fundamentally flawed in its ability to protect the vulnerable. Sarah Sharif was just 10 years old when she was found dead at her home, her body bearing the marks of prolonged and systematic torture, and her father, her stepmother, her uncle, all found guilty of her murder, a crime that unfolded over the very noses of social services, the courts, and the agencies meant to safeguard children like her. How did we let that happen? This isn't just a story of individual cruelty, but a reflection of a justice system riddled with delays, arrogance, obfuscation, and bureaucratic inertia. Social workers had long been aware of concerns regarding Sarah's welfare. Schools had flagged up visible bruises, yet at every stage the system failed to act decisively. Why? Because the mechanisms meant to intervene are slow, risk-averse, and burdened with red tape, and because the justice system is unaccountable. Consider the judicial oversight of Sarah's care. The courts, in their wisdom, considered it appropriate to grant custody to a man with a documented history of domestic violence. The same system that should have protected Sarah instead placed her in the hands of her murderers. What does that say about the capacity of our family courts to make life or death decisions for children? And what does it reveal about the role of the social services whose recommendations judges rely upon, despite their frequent failures? This isn't just an aberration. How many more children must die before we acknowledge that family courts and social services are paralysed by their own caution or by their own arrogance? So on the one hand, you've got people who are placed in the wrong place because of judicial caution. On the other, you've got people who are denied access because of judicial oversight, because of a knee-jerk response. On the one hand, you've got judges who are more afraid of making the wrong call in the eyes of the bureaucratic process than of failing to save a life. On the other, you've got people who are urged, who are egged on to be harsher than they need to be. If a child has suffered unexplained injuries, why is returning them to their abuser still an option? Why are the rights of abusive parents still prioritised over the safety of their children? And when failure is exposed, what do we see? Delays, obfuscation, a refusal to admit fault. Because in the end, the system favours itself, not the people it's meant to protect. All you have to do is look at medical negligence. All you have to do is look at NHS whistleblowers and what happens to them. They lose their homes, they lose their jobs, they lose their life. The judiciary initially sought to anonymise the judges, to make the judges in Sarah's case invisible, as though shielding them from scrutiny was more important than examining their decisions. It took a Court of Appeal ruling to overturn this extraordinary act of self-protection. Open justice was nearly sacrificed to judicial discomfort. If our courts cannot withstand scrutiny, what hope is there for accountability? This is about a justice system which is more concerned about its own reputation than it is about the care that it has been granted to administer, the care that it should be exercising for the people. The consequences of these failures extend far beyond this one case. The family court system routinely prioritises process over outcomes, and social services are hobbled by risk-averse individuals, by risk aversion of the system, rather than risk management. And the anonymity that surrounds these cases allows mistakes to be buried. It allows failings of the system to persist unchallenged. It allows tragedies to repeat. And nothing is more telling about this than the fact that you cannot access the system anymore. You cannot access, for example, you want to contact the Home Office? You can't. Believe me, you can't. The most you can do is get an advice line from the passport office. That's the most you can do. We need to demand reform, and we need to demand accountability. We need transparency in judicial decision-making. And we need to hold the system to account. If the system says it takes 20 days to reply, then in 20 days you need a response. If it says it takes 40 days to reply, then you need a response. And if it goes beyond that time, you need an explanation. This has got worse and worse over the last few years. Certainly since Brexit. I'm not going to blame Brexit here. I'm simply going to say there's a convergence of issues, and maybe the judicial and the Home Office systems are hiding behind Brexit so that everybody blames Brexit rather than them. Brexit and COVID seem to have become an excuse for monumental laziness and a ducking of responsibility, an excuse for the promotion of control rather than care. We need a change in how things are going, and we need a system that errs on the side of child safety rather than parental entitlement. And the case of Sarah Sharif is not just a tragedy, it's a warning. How we respond now will determine whether our justice system serves the vulnerable or simply protects itself. And the time for reform is not tomorrow, it's today.